before we get into tonight's main event?
Sorry.
Agenda, please.
So the first thing is a resolution awarding the bid for special inspections and testing for the new highway garage project to Tectonic.
Okay, this is something we are mandated to do, and we're also, it's been recommended that Tectonic are the ones to do it, so.
I just want to say that the number that's here is an estimate based on the size of the building. It's not a hard cost number.
Right.
The construction group put together this number based on size and complexity of the building. He's thinking it's going to be around this much. Could be much less, it could be more, but he wanted 25,000 allotted for the project.
Right, and I wouldn't, you know, like you say, I don't think we're going to exceed that, but we do want to have it available, so. And we do need to test the concrete, we do need to test the soil that we're going to bear on, the whole bit. I mean, a lot of it is mostly about concrete testing. And the nuclear moisture density gauge.
Yeah, that was a new one for me.
That's, I don't even know what that is, but the geotechnical part, we do want to avail ourselves to, so. With that, I would entertain a motion on the resolution hiring Tectonic for special inspections and testing for the Highway Department headquarters.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye, thank you.
One more thing before you get to the marijuana legislation. John just wanted to, we would like to schedule a walkthrough for the town hall for next week with the whole board.
What
He wants
day?
to do it.
What day, does any day this week work for you guys? In the morning, like 8 a.m.?
This week?
Or next week.
Next week, I'm sorry.
Next week, I'm fine, any day.
Earlier the better, fine with me.
Yeah, 8 a.m. is fine by
8
me.
a.m. Justin's away the 7th.
I don't want to do it Monday morning.
It's
I'll do
too
it
early for you.
Tuesday.
Mondays.
No, it's just Monday is Monday, and I gotta get my
So
guys
So
going.
Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday at 8 a.m.? I'll make sure Justin's available, so.
I have one other item I'd like to bring up. Last night I attended the village board meeting. They were going to have a community day as they always do, but last year they didn't have it. And we usually donate $500, so they were asking if we could do that again this year. I think that's what we have it set aside anyway, right, for,
Add it to the agenda.
yeah, I'm not going to add it for now. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of it.
Celebrations, or what do we have?
I mean, well, we should have it in celebrations because we
Yeah.
haven't, fishing day hasn't happened in the last 2
There
years.
hasn't been a lot of
so
celebrating.
We haven't really used it at
Yeah,
all.
we'll go ahead and do that.
No, I just want to bring it up, usually I know it's $500 we have in a budget for it, so in
Yeah.
the last few years, last year we did not use it, but the previous years we always did, so
Yeah.
just wanted
I'll go
to
down
bring it up.
for my free ice cream. The bike judging contest.
That's a tough contest.
What kid can hate the councilman? It's called Hate the Councilman Day.
I've done it several years, it's not easy.
We excuse the town clerk. She can be excused.
Thank you, Tara.
All right, the next item is a discussion regarding New York State marijuana legislation. I would like to first turn it over to our counsel, Stephen Gaba, to give us a little background and round things out for us before we kick this off.
Sure. This year, Governor Cuomo signed into law the New York State cannabis tax legislation, authorization and tax legislation law. It has quite a long name. And what it does is it legalizes the sale and use of cannabis and the growing of it in New York State. There's not a lot that local municipalities can do about it. There is a provision there saying that you can tax cannabis operations within your municipality at the rate of, I believe, 4% of the sales tax. But if you want to, you can opt out of the cannabis legislation. Now, opting out doesn't mean that you opt out of the law altogether by any stretch of the imagination. It's very, very limited. In fact, there are only 2 areas in which local municipalities can opt out of the cannabis legislation. The first one is retail sales establishments within the municipal boundaries, excluding any villages. So I mean, your villages wouldn't be affected. It would only be, they have to legislate on their own. It would only be the unincorporated portion of the town. And the other is on-site consumption of cannabis establishments, which they're colloquially called coffee houses. People go in and you can smoke or eat a brownie or what have you as far as consumption of it goes. If you wish to prohibit those two uses within your municipality, you have to adopt a local law. The local law is subject to permissive referendum. There are two provisions for permissive referendum, at least as far as towns are concerned, under New York state law. One is under the town law, I believe it's section 91, and the other is under municipal home rule law, section 24. 24 with municipal home rule law is the one that applies to the cannabis local law permissive referendum, and it has different time frames than the town law does. What it says is that once you adopt a resolution proving your local law, you have to, within 10 days, file a notice you publish and post it in the newspaper, and you post it to the clerk's office. And if within 45 days after the enactment of the local law, not the posting, a petition is filed, and it's a little squirrely as far as the qualifications of it. A petition is filed for local law suggesting it be submitted to permissive referendum at the next general election of the state or local government officers held in such local government not less than 60 days after the filing of the petition. In other words, more than 60 days after filing the petition, you will be on the ballot in that election. So if you enacted your local law, and you ought to allow for the filing period, the petition period, which is 45 days from the enactment of the local law, and then you still had 60 days until the referendum, until the upcoming election, you would be on the ballot for that. So your ballot is November 4th, okay? And if you enacted it now, you'd have 45 days to wait until a petition is filed. If the petition is filed at the end of the 45 days, you probably wouldn't be 60 days before the upcoming November 4 election. Now, that's not the end of the world, because what it means is that at the next general election, after 60 days, is when you would be on the ballot. I do not believe the village election, if there is one, in 2022 would count, because that isn't really unincorporated portion of the town election. So I think you'd probably have to wait until the 2022 general election for your law to take effect, okay? One more thing about the cannabis local law. The opt-out provision only lasts until December 31 of this year. If you do not enact your local law, and it doesn't mean that it has to go to referendum by then, it's just got to adopt a resolution enacting it. Before December 31, the state law says you irrevocably waive the right to outlaw the retail sales and the on-site consumption shops. Now, that's a little bit of a chimera, because state law can, of course, be amended to say, oh yeah, you can do it again now. But if the state law stands as it is, you either do it by December or it's waived forever. And if you enact a local law outlawing the retail sales and the on-site consumption establishments now, you can always repeal the law later on at any time. The state law specifically says that, but I mean, even if it didn't, I think that would be, kind of goes without saying. And you know, allow those establishments if it looks like something that the town is interested in. The only other thing I'd add, and it's not really necessary, but other municipalities do it. If you wish to make retail sales and on-site establishments illegal uses that are not allowed by law, that's fine, and it should cover you, but just enacting a law saying that's what we're going to do. But if you want it to be, you know, belt and suspenders safe, you'd probably amend your zoning code to also include a provision saying that prohibited uses within the town include establishments for retail sales of cannabis and establishments for on-site consumption of it. Don't have to do it, but it's like I say, that's kind of the way that it's done.
So I have two questions. One is, it's a mandatory permissive referendum, or is it, like some laws, we enact laws and they're subject to permissive referendum, and then people have to get a petition together and submit the petition, and is it that, or is it mandatory? Is it?
No, it's that. If the petition isn't
Okay.
filed, the law goes into
I
effect
just wanted to be clear
45
about
days
that.
after enactment.
All right.
And the number of signatures are based on the gubernatorial election.
10% of, and it's not only the registered, it's got to be signed by registered voters who are residents of the town, and it's based on the number of people who voted for governor in the last general election. So if you were in the general election, you decided, I ain't voting for governor, I don't feel like filling that one out, you wouldn't count in the numbers for figuring out
So they
10%.
got to wrestle about between 60 and 80 people.
Something like that. Under the town law, there's a minimum signature requirement of 100.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you're going to be that far off that here. It might be as few as 60. You're going to have to talk to the Board of Elections. They can give you the numbers
Right.
for the last gubernatorial election and the number of people in Philipstown who voted for governor one way or the other, and then you take 10% of that, and there you are.
The other question is, if you allow it in town, can you regulate where it happens?
That's the zoning, and yes, you can.
You can do that through zoning.
Absolutely.
It'd be similar, we've outlawed or eliminated adult bookstores and stuff in our zoning as well. I mean, how would it be different?
You don't eliminate it, you just confine it to an area.
I think our zoning reads, they're not
I
permitted.
don't think you can well, anyway, I'm not
But
gonna
I
get to
think,
that, but.
but it's different, I guess, because it's a
Would you-
different scenario.
Could you confine it to a certain area? I mean,
If you had a rational basis for doing it, that's our commercial strip, that's our retail strip. We don't want to have these popping up somewhere along, a highway area or something where it might be a traffic problem. If you have a rational basis for it, you can do it.
Right, like any zoning thing or any planning board application, say for parking reasons or, egress, ingress reasons, but.
Business, we certainly wouldn't.
Adopting this local law would make it illegal, as in a crime, or at least a civil violation, to engage in retail sales or open an establishment for on-site consumption. And that's fine, you call the police or whatever it is, they write up a ticket and so forth. If you change your zoning, or like you say, limit in your zoning as to where it can be, then it's also a civil violation that you can commence justice court proceedings against whoever it is who's engaging in it. You can go to Supreme Court and try to get an injunction. You can build in fines if you have a mind to.
We know how well that goes.
Well, it can be a lengthy process, but it at least gives you one more, arrow in your shaft there,
Yeah.
or quiver.
Is there a certain amount of establishments that can be determined in, like, say, the Philipstown? Can anybody and their brother open one up? Can a deli do it, or how's that work if you want to do?
Retail sales are retail sales.
Right,
Anybody
so I
who's
mean-
now, it's all licensed by the state. Nobody gets to sell the cannabis unless they go to the
Understood,
state.
but if they applied for the license, anybody, say you up there, Brooks Plaza, whatever it is, and you got the deli there, you got the BP station there, and all those types of places. And you could have 5 people that could apply for a license and actually sell it. There's not a finite amount of numbers of people in the community that can do it, is what I'm asking.
The state law doesn't, but now the cannabis board set up, I think would have authority. Now, it hasn't done much yet, you understand, it's brand new, but I think it would have authority to say, we want to space these out, or we're not going to grant you a license because you're too close to someone else. I would think they would have authority to do that. Whether they would actually do it or not, I can't tell you. But from the town's perspective, if you don't opt out of the law, and you don't have anything in your zoning which prohibits establishing these uses, really there's nothing, other than possibly the state stepping in and saying, we're not going to give you a license, which prevents you from having 5, 10, 15 packed together like so many magazine stands.
Is that, I think I've read that the Cannabis Control Board at the state level takes that into account when granting a license, the proximity to other license holders.
They may very well, I'm not
That's part of-
exactly familiar with
That's
what
been
they're.
the pattern in Massachusetts, they don't allow 2 side by side. But in Maine, I just drove to Maine,
You could have
It
five
was like,
next to each
a
other.
it was like driving to Poughkeepsie and, these smoke shops, it was like, they were everywhere. So that was, I probably saw literally 30 on Route 1. So it was pretty interesting, but.
And there was something else, they can only be X amount of feet away from a school. I remember reading something about
Yeah, I'm
that.
sure they're not
which
going
wa- Which really wasn't that far away from a school, it was only a couple hundred feet or something like that. So, well, I guess, anyone?
I feel a little bit just on the context here for people here, just the fact that the local decision, as we're all talking about, is just whether or not to allow retail sales and consumption sites. But just, we've all discussed this, but just the fact that we are living in a new reality of law in New York State, that marijuana has been legalized recreationally, and that there is, under the locality has no bearing on that. People are now allowed to carry 3 ounces. This is under the state law. They are allowed to grow plants at home, although it seems like the state policy is figuring out how that's going to work. They are not allowed to be stopped by the police with marijuana as a reason. So, we are living in that new reality, and this is just the conversation about whether or not in Philipstown to allow dispensaries or on-site consumption.
And nothing we're doing here is going to affect any of what you just
Exactly.
said.
Exactly.
People
Yeah.
can,
Nothing they can.
yeah, they can smoke pot in public,
Yeah.
Beacon is gonna vote for it, Fishkill probably will, Peekskill probably
Peekskill
will.
already did.
So it's,
Yeah.
what we do in Philipstown is only gonna have bearing on the sales and then on the taxation issue. And that's a funny thing. I mean, these things are in, I don't know, in sort of the loosest terms, a form of vice. The state loves these things because they're cash cows. They love gambling, which I am, legal gambling I'm totally against. And liquor sales, nobody's got a problem with liquor sales. They make tons of money off that. They tax everything. So, for us to say, okay, we're not gonna have it here, we also have to be aware that we are passing up a revenue stream. Having said that, I also feel strange even about saying that. It's a funny situation to say, we're gonna tax something and make money on something that, a lot of people see as a problem.
And to me, it's how much? I mean, we're not talking about a windfall here. I know there's examples, we've got literature about it, but
Yeah.
these places were the first ones to
Oh,
sell.
yeah,
They were the
they
only.
big windfalls.
Right, they were the only one in 5-state area that was selling.
Yeah.
So, like you've already said, Peekskill's gonna have it, Beacon's gonna have it, Fishkill's. So you would really talk about the local,
Yeah, you're not
desire.
gonna preclude anybody from going and buying marijuana.
No.
They wanna go get it, they wanna go get it. They're gonna get it, people are gonna smoke it, they're gonna do what they wanna do. It's, and my other just thoughts about it, and I wrestle with this, is, what's done more harm over time? People consuming alcohol or people smoking pot? I would say there's a lot more people in rehab from,
But marijuana's never been legal, so we don't know.
No.
We don't know that.
yeah,
Yeah,
But I
alcohol's
just-
been around forever compared to, but,
alcohol's been causing tragic health problems
forever.
and destruction forever, so. But it's almost like a small hypocrisy to say, well, we have no problem with people, you wanna go drink 4, 5, 6, 10 martinis, go ahead, do whatever you want. And, you're not gonna preclude people from smoking pot either, you're just not. And there are age limits, but it's complicated, it's a complicated topic, so.
I've just got a question for Steve. So he made the point that just so, I guess it's all in the head. So the towns and villages make their own decision about the dispensary and the consumption on site. So, there's a lot going on with this new legislation. So the town can either do nothing, and then they're opted into having both retail sales shops and consumption cafes by December 31st, or opt out. But if the town opts out, they can come back in and allow retail or consumption at any other time in the future.
Also, if the public forces a permissive referendum, they can vote it in.
They could vote it in.
So if people, that's the other thing that I'm more sort of comfortable with saying, look, we're not saying no, but we want to have a town-wide discussion about it. And if you're that impassioned about it, we've never had a permissive referendum come up, never. So it's work. So, yeah, go for it, but,
There is an avenue for it, though.
yeah, there are avenues for it. I mean, just from a standpoint of being slightly lazy, you opt out and throw it in the public's lap. I mean, it's not a simple discussion. I mean, but
Oh, I can tell you, other municipalities they wrestle with some of the issues that you're discussing, but it's really more of what are these shops going to look like? What impact are they going to have on property values when they go into a neighborhood or a commercial setting? What other types of shops or businesses are they going to draw around them? And nobody really knows right now. I mean, you can look at a Happy Habits or something like that, and maybe you like the way it looks, maybe you don't like the way it looks, but you can't say, oh, gee, these shops, whether it's on-site consumption or retail sales, are going to look like that or aren't going to look like that or will be bigger or smaller or whatever. So they want to kind of take a wait-and-see attitude and let other municipalities see how they develop first.
Yeah.
And if they don't like them, then, they keep them prohibited. But if there's no harm done and it looks like you're missing out on a good thing, then you repeal the law and you allow them to open. And it's just one way to go, but I mean, that's really, I think, a little more where the conversation is than, gee, we don't particularly care for marijuana, or gosh, we're in favor of marijuana. It's more, what effect will allowing these stores to open have on our community from a commercial standpoint?
well, in Seattle, when I was out there, and they've been doing it for a long time, it was almost comical. I mean, you'd have a marijuana dispensary, a bakery, a pizzeria, a beer distributorship, and that was it. It was those four things. Or you'd have a marijuana dispensary and just a bakery. I'm trying to going, you can't make this up. It was just crazy. The one thing I would say, it got almost oppressive walking around Seattle. I mean, you were walking through clouds of weed smoke constantly. It was odd, And I'm not a prude or anything, but I was saying, I'm just not enjoying this. I mean, you couldn't walk down the street where you just, I don't think cigarette smoke either. So, but it got to that level where you were like, this is ridiculous, But you're not going to be able to stop that, and I doubt it's going to happen in this town. But who knows? But
People are allowed to smoke, right, smoke marijuana wherever cigarette
Oh, yeah.
smoking is allowed in the law, yeah.
Is there any, so you go to a bar, have 3 or 4 drinks, you come out and get in your car, and you get pulled over, and you get a DWI, or DWAI. Is there any type of test that they can do with marijuana, or say, hey, I'm buzzed driving, or, how does that affect people like that? And having automobile accidents or getting pulled over, how does that?
I'm not sure what test law enforcement uses. I would expect they could use a blood test to check the THC level in your blood, but I don't really know.
Because just like anything else,
We did get one email from a resident in
Yes.
town that suggested there was a test, and Danielle maybe could elaborate.
They are working on it, it's not easy to get, but
Right.
they're still working
This-
through it. I think that's why some of these things are, you wait, the longer you wait, the longer it takes, these kinks can get worked out and
Right.
that kind of technology. Because even if it is there, it's not being widely used yet.
Gotcha.
and also you run into constitutional issues. Can you give someone a blood test based on an assumption? It's.
Well, they do for DWI.
Yeah, that's a little easier to determine, you have probable cause, but
I
it's,
think it was maybe saliva based, I think they
Yeah.
were looking at that.
yeah. And a lot of employers are still doing drug testing and saying, they don't want people smoking pot,
Just like you wouldn't want them drinking when they're employed by. Exactly.
No, it just happens to stay in your system for a lot longer. Somebody can go out and get completely trashed on a Friday and be fine by Monday. Yeah.
Want to stay in your system for up to 20-something days or something
Oh,
like
yeah.
that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it just bans someone from going to the Olympics, which I think is
Yeah.
completely absurd, but,
Yeah, right, it's just that girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but. Danielle, did you want
Yeah,
to step up and?
You could pull that out if it's too hot.
Hi, everyone. I don't know. It's not on? It is? You can hear me? Okay. Yeah, so I think just related to all this conversations, this is exactly kind of, there's so much nuance to all of this. And I think the point that you're all making, and Jason was starting at, is that this doesn't change anything about legalization. Legalization has happened, right? So it's like how, I think just as, from the perspective of the hub, it's, and looking at the problems that we see coming through the door. I know, Richard, you spoke about alcohol, and alcohol definitely nationwide is, kills more people, is like the most, addictive substance and puts more people, in treatment. But I would say that I think people walking through, I do see a lot of people, who struggle with marijuana use. They self-medicate, they start off as occasional users, and then, it's like waking up in the morning, having to smoke throughout the day, and young people. And that's, I think, where my caution is, like, I just want to caution against the messaging, because I think New York State's doing a really bad job, actually, like with the messaging. It's like, it's legal, and it's like every time, like Canada, their messaging is every time they talk about legalization, they have like the, underneath, like, but not for young people. It is not, it's 21, it is not, it is still not legal for you to smoke it. And, it goes back to brain health and, young minds still developing, and it's literally, the more and more research comes out, it's just been shown that this is, the easier the access is, then the more likely young people are going to use it. And so it's just like, having bars and selling drinks legally, you know what you're getting. So that's the positives, right? Like in terms of marijuana, like what you're getting. But it's easier to get, and it's easier to use and start a habit and dependency. So I would just caution, regardless of, the decision, is that the messaging to young people just has to be so strong. And I think one of the biggest things is messaging. If Philipstown comes out as one of the first, to be like, we're going to have a dispensary and we're doing that message is loud and clear too to young people. Like young people see that, like, oh, look at our town, we believe in this, and not that it's, but it sends a message. So I think that's in terms of like, in terms of development, youth development, brain development, and just having that message really clear, concerns me.
From what I understand, I mean, there's a lot of people don't even smoke it anymore, right? You can get these pills, you can get gummies, there's all kinds of different varieties of this. It's not like you're just gonna go in someplace and smoke it either, right? People could consume it through brownies and all kinds of different things, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like people don't want to hear this, see the smoking, but there's no reason you can take a gummy and eat it as well. So,
But I hear Danielle's point too, that you need messaging on both sides. Look, this is legal for people 21 and over. Anything you smoke is obviously not going to promote health. So, that's why a lot of people turn to consuming it, in other forms. But it does need to be balanced by saying, look, this is a decision that should be made by someone who's an adult. Also, you're 21. Some people are adults at 21, not many, but, and the same thing goes with alcohol, and a lot of these things come from the values of your upbringing. It's going to be, what's your family doing? What kind of messaging are you getting at home? If you're, if anybody at home is drinking every single day, then it just becomes regular. It's the same thing. If somebody's standing around the house, they're smoking pot 24/7, it's going to be, well, big deal. So, most of these things, and I know these societal messages are really important, and the government messages, they've had really successful campaigns with things, but you need to be honest about it too with kids, because kids, they smell hypocrisy and dishonesty a mile away, just like anybody. I just think back to the Reagan years, Nancy Reagan, just say no. Well, okay, great, not taking anything into account. It was ridiculous. But it's, from my perspective, just again, going back to my thoughts on putting it to the public, having a permissive referendum, it puts the onus on the public. And that in itself is one kind of messaging also, saying, look, we'd rather have people make this a group decision. Us making a decision, yeah, we're elected leaders, but it's a fairly large decision to be making.
I mean, the only positive for us would be taxation.
Oh, yeah, and
And that just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, it's
I
an
mean,
odd thing.
Yeah,
It's odd to make money off. I wouldn't even be comfortable if they said, look, town can start taxing alcohol. It's like, yeah, well, I wouldn't really be comfortable with that. And certainly not with gambling. I
It's
mean,
not going to be a large sum of money that would even make it enticing. I mean, not that it would make a difference to me, but that's the only positive.
yeah, I mean, I could see, like, the town of Great Barrington, the first couple of years, they were making millions of dollars. And you can take that money and do a lot of good things with it, you know?
Right.
And,
But that
that's
that
another-
horse is left. I mean,
yeah,
they were the first
I
ones.
don't see that happening here.
They were the first
no.
ones.
You know, but and that's a funny thing, it's also the driving power of money. It's just, you know, it does drive politics, and it's tempting. You know, if somebody said, look, we're gonna make $1 million next year, it would be very tempting to say, well, in the balance, if they're gonna be selling all around us and we're gonna make this kind of money, what kind of programs could we, you know, institute or support with that kind of money? But again, as you said, I don't see it. Even if somebody had $1 million in sales, you're talking about $40,000, which,
So how does that work, Steve? Say the Village of Cold Spring decides to have a dispensary. They get 4%, do we get any share of that?
So you
from being
have to
the-
enact a local law for the 4%, and it's only within your municipality. I don't know if you'd get a piece of what's in Cold Spring or not. The law says that you have to enact a local law, though.
so we can't blame the village and then reap the benefits.
I don't think that would work. It's not a bad plan, Richard, but I don't think
I
that's.
I believe that towns share with villages only if both have opted in. If the town opts out and the village opts in,
And we get nothing.
yes.
Yeah.
I believe that's right.
The county gets a portion
Oh,
of
that- they
4%
get
by
portion.
default, no matter what.
No matter what, right?
They get 25%, is that right?
You get 25%
Of the 4%.
Of the 4%,
regardless.
yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
1%, that's like 1%.
So we can blame you and then take the money. I'm amazed the county's not supporting it. They love money.
Well, but they're also not declining their share, they're just telling us not to take it.
Yeah.
I mean, from my point of view, it's a lot to consider quickly, right? There's so much
Yeah.
going on with the law. I mean, it sounds like it's a big community decision. It sounds like the town, the localities are gonna have to decide regulations around personal cultivation at home. I know we know that's not sorted out yet. Individuals can grow 3 plants at home, and 3 mature and 3 immature plants, 6 mature and I don't know who wrote this law, but they can keep 5 pounds at home. I thought there was a decimal point. I was like, was a decimal
Like,
point?
I don't keep 5 pounds of
missing
flour in the house. I mean, who wrote this thing? Whoever had 5 pounds of weed? It's like,
Whoever wrote that,
I
maybe
got a
hasn't.
suitcase under my bed.
So there are some elements of the law to kind of, think through and look through, but by December 31st to make a decision. I mean, things like local zoning and where these can go or not. Things like a locality can decide to restrict where it can be smoked if they restrict where cigarette smoking is being done in their community. I mean, things like, Steve just informed me of this right before the meeting. I didn't understand that municipalities can make a decision between a retail dispensary and a consumption site. They don't have to take both. They can choose to take just a dispensary and no consumption, or just a consumption and no dispensary, and those are different things. And then the tax issue about how I think it says that villages and towns have to split the sales tax unless there's an agreement otherwise. And so there's whole intermunicipal working, like what's Cold Spring and Nelsonville gonna do?
Right.
So it's just a lot to figure out very quickly with that, and also what do people think who live here,
Yeah. I mean, this process, it would be, again, too compressed to say, yeah, we're opting in and let the chips fall where they may. It just feels like we'd need a lot more time and a lot more information and a lot more clarity from the state as to what it is.
And we don't have that time.
We don't have it, so. you know, I'm opting towards opting out. I'm leaning towards opting out and just saying, you know, if the public feels this strongly, if somebody wants to take it up as a case, you know, bring it before us. But, you know, you're not restricting anybody's ability to get it. You're not restricting anybody's ability to use it. And I'm not comfortable with making money off vice. You know, and I know it's somebody to say, well, you know, you call that vice. Well, it kind of is, in my opinion. I mean, I just am not comfortable with that, so.
I feel the same way, and if, you know, time tells us something different, we can always opt back in. I mean,
Yeah.
we can go back in and say, you know what, it is working in Beacon, it is working in Fishkill, and maybe we should have one here, you know, for convenience and for, you know, the revenue, but right now, I don't see the need for it, so.
Yeah.
I would also side with, you know, opting out of it.
Yeah, and it's also odd. It's just an odd decision to have to make. It's, you know, I know, I'll leave it at that.
If there was a referendum, so if there was upswell in the community to not want to opt out, Stephen, were you saying that it couldn't happen, that referendum could not happen at this November's election, it would have to wait to November 2022?
Well,
Or
no,
would there be a
it
special?
would happen at this election in the event that there's no, if the petition was filed soon enough. The petition is filed more than 60 days before November 4th, then you would be on the ballot for this year. If it happens less than 60 days before November 4th, then you got to wait till next year.
Right, and that's a pretty compressed schedule for somebody to get the data, get the signatures, submit the petition. And I wouldn't want to see it happen, because then we'd be under the gun to figure out, well, how are we going to regulate this? You know, how are we going to zone things? That would create a lot of headaches for us to do something that quickly, to keep up, or to not keep up and just suddenly it's, you know, goes wherever anybody wants it in a commercial zone.
You can sever the zoning from the opting out. There's no reason that they have to be in the same local law. The municipalities that do it just ban it town-wide. If you wanted to, you know, do the opt-out and then wait and think about whether you want to do it town-wide, or maybe you want to, you know, allow it in some instances if you opt back in, you'd certainly be free to do that. You could just adopt a vanilla local law saying we're exercising the town's right to opt out. Just ignore the zoning for now.
Yeah, because the zoning makes it a lot more complicated, as we know.
So if we opt out, and then someone comes in and puts on the ballot for November 4th election, and it passes, then,
If it passes, let's be clear about this. The town would enact a law opting out. If people want that to go to referendum, the referendum's going to be, should the local law stand or should the local law fall? Should it not go into effect? And if people vote yes, you know, it should go into effect, then it's going to go into effect, and you have to deal with it. If they vote no, the local law just doesn't go into effect.
but after, say it says, you know, it passes, for example. Now, do we have to start changing our zoning right away, or how's that work?
You don't have to start, well, let's be clear. If it passes in the local law is enacted, you don't have to change your zoning at all, because it's not legal in the town. You know, now you're limited to criminal remedies at that point. You can't, you know, pursue it as a zoning violation, but it's illegal in the town, so of course you don't have to change your zoning because it's an illegal use.
Asking if the permissive referendum went to saying, look, the local law doesn't get passed if it fails.
So now you've opted in because the opt-out law fails.
Right.
Now you really better address your zoning, because otherwise it's pretty much, well, it's not a prohibited use. You know, now it is a retail use, so it would be
Right.
limited to retail areas. If
That's
it's
right.
just a residential, you know.
But I mean, from Garrison to Fishkill
Fishkill.
is all retail.
It's all retail, right?
So,
So, unlike this, so, again, so we would have to change our zoning between November and January 1st?
well, it's not, I think also, it's like any other business application. They'd have to go before the planning board.
Right.
They'd have to show, you know, how they're gonna deal with parking, you know, the whole 9 yards. So I don't think we'd be under the gun that much. And I think within a month or so, we could say, well, we're gonna regulate it to X number of areas.
And don't forget, you could enact a moratorium.
Yeah, true, right.
And Steve, just to clarify, the date, I think we've already missed the date for this November, so.
Well, you've missed the date if, yeah, you pretty much have. Let's just leave it at that. There's a way, but yeah, it's you got like
What's the date
13
meaning
days.
what?
November 4th.
It's got to be within 60 days before, 45 days from now puts you like 70, 80 days. I did the math before. You'd have to enact the local law in like warp speed time. And I don't even think you have time to notice. I think you need at least 10 days to notice the public hearing. We haven't even started drafting the law, for crying out loud. I mean, it's not going to happen.
So any referendum would have to happen after the November election,
It would happen next year.
November 2022.
So
there
what
was the
happens
vote,
between
so-
now and then? People, okay, so I mean, what happens? I mean, obviously, people can consume it, but so no one can sell it or anything like that, is what you're saying? And for that whole year or so, if not longer.
Well, you'd probably want to enact a moratorium just to see if the local law passes or not. You know, unless you want to allow them to go forward, then if it gets, you know, outlawed, or if you wouldn't want to enact a zoning change pending it, so.
No,
It'd be a little
no,
messy,
no,
let's
no,
just leave it
just-
at that. But there's ways around it if you're concerned there would be a flood between, because the local law is not effective until the moratorium's held. So you'll have enacted the local law, but it won't be in effect until next year.
So if the referendum vote was gonna happen November 2022, then the town could choose to opt back in even before that referendum.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you repealed it, it
That's
would
all
moot the referendum, that's true.
Based on if somebody.
brings us a
Brings-
petition, a valid petition, which, it's not easy.
No.
I mean, anybody who's carried petitions to get somebody on the ballot knows it's not easy. But that sort of thing is going to be even trickier. So,
I just have one question. If we opt out, that requires a local law, so would that require a public hearing? So there would be a big
Yeah.
chance to get to
Absolutely.
hear what people really think
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, that's the first round of that, and you feel, you get, you know, you can gauge how much, you know, public sentiment there is by the amount of people who show up. And, you know, we never know. Who knows? You could fill the room, or you could have nobody showing people.
Right, you don't know. You just don't know how strong people are.
But that'll be sort of a bellwether to see
Good test.
how people feel about it. But, like I said, right now, I'm more for opting out just from being lazy. It's too big a subject for us to tackle this quickly, and there's just not enough data. I haven't seen anything from Massachusetts, except, all you hear about is the money, you know, but you don't hear about
The negative
other
parts of
things.
it.
Sure, if you could come up to the,
Thanks for having this discussion. My name's Anthony Leese. I'm an attorney and a local business owner. I have my practice in the area. I'm just going to hold this. The one thing about timing I just wanted to point out is that the legislature adjourned this year without appointing anyone to the Cannabis Control Board. So they do not, you know, the idea that all of a sudden if you don't opt out January 1st, all of a sudden there's going to be all these applications is very low. I've actually hired an attorney who's looking into the application process, and they don't even anticipate that the regulations statewide will be in place for an application until late 2022 and possibly 2023. So it's basically like, I just wanted to clarify that one piece of it, because there's not, I don't think, going to be a huge rush come January 1st, you know, to all of a sudden figure out how to do all these things. The other point that just I know keeps coming up is about the only benefit being the tax revenue. But I actually have been in touch with Great Barrington, some officials there, and talked to them. And basically what they've seen is, and I just think everyone should keep this in mind, is that when you make it legally more available, it basically dries up the illegal market. It's like classic capitalism. And so they've actually seen a decrease in usage of marijuana among teens in Great Barrington since the dispensaries have opened. And then the last point I would make is just that unlike a bar or the sale of alcohol, where it kind of puts the onus on people, you know, on the establishment to check it, we all know people use fake IDs. We all know sometimes they don't check it, you know. Cannabis is much more highly regulated, and you actually have to scan the ID, and then there is a registry that will be in place that actually logs everything you're purchasing. So it's like a much different approach. And then the last piece is the security approach. There's like very stringent security measures. So the idea that like the local gas station could just easily apply for a license and sell, gas and pot at the station is kind of like a, I think people are really afraid of that, but I think that's highly unlikely.
Yeah, I know that when you go in one of these places, you have to present your license, it's got to get scanned.
Yep.
It's much more regulated than walking into a liquor store and buying a bottle of liquor, which is strange. Because somebody goes, smokes a little pot and gets in their car, somebody goes into a liquor store and gets a quart of vodka and downs that, where's the likelihood of an accident happening?
Well,
But,
like also too, I think Massachusetts, they don't display anything. It's not like you can go up and smell some different types of pot they have out there. They don't have it out.
yeah, they do.
They do? I didn't,
Yeah,
I
it's-
just happened to stop by one last week. I didn't see
It's like-
anything.
Like a pharmacy.
Yeah, when I was
Run
there,
like
they
pharmacies.
said they couldn't show you anything, is what they told me, but that was up in Cape Cod, so who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe it was local registration up there, I don't know.
Yeah.
You made the point about Great Barrington, and Richard, you made the point that it's a different context, but it's worth learning from. And another resident, Eric, who put forward us those thoughts
Yes.
before, has also kind of extended connecting us to an alderman in Great Barrington just to learn. So I think, Okay, okay. It was very thorough comment and research by you all, so it was very helpful. Thank you for giving that to us all. And so I think we're gonna try to set up a phone call with the alderman sometime the next week or two, for us, if anybody's interested, Kathleen, just to learn on the run, yeah.
Yeah, because Great Barrington is a town that's very similar to Philipstown. It's same, there's the same population, essentially, it's small. It's got a much more vibrant business district, but, yeah. Anyone else have anything you want to add? Hi, Sylvia. How are you? Is Houlihan Lawrence going to just start, are they applying, or? I bought this house and I can't even remember why. If you want to go up to the mic, please.
I'm looking at the guidance that we got in the village from NICOM about consumption. Sorry, I flipped through. So you can control consumption on properties you own. And we need to confirm, but I take that also to mean sidewalks, right? That's town property, village property.
Yeah.
But in the same way that the public health law prohibits cigarette smoking in particular areas, so does the cannabis law. And they include places of work. Here we go. Places of employment, bars, food service establishments, enclosed indoor, There's a whole list that roughly mirrors smoking cigarettes in terms of where you can and can't.
Yeah, the one interesting point is, and we're suddenly in a mild panic here, saying, oh, we're going to do this. But looking at New York State and the glacial pace at which they move on anything, and that includes getting us our federal funding from the American Rescue Plan. They were supposed to have that to us June 11th. That was the federal law. And haven't seen that, so as you say, there's probably, this is going to be a slow rollout. So
And there's even talk of legalizing it at the federal level, which would complicate everything even that much more as to where it would go and how it's going to be dispensed.
yeah, I'll be planting it on my grave.
I think we can add something else to the other benefits that we've talked about, which is just, the fact that, in the decriminalizing, we all know that the criminalization, now it kind of seems like with the 5 pounds at home law, it kind of went from, you can get a record, mostly if you're, black or Hispanic, you can get a record that starts with carrying some pot that may lead to your records denying you from jobs or leading to more time in prison. And now we're on the flip side. And so from the benefit, I think just the fact that the state is thinking about expunging those records that were just pot only, so people aren't denied for jobs. And then the fact that for those, I think New York State is trying to hold half of the licenses given to dispensaries and consumption sites for people from communities that faced that sort of criminalization. So it's a benefit. I don't know if that would impact Philipstown, but it's something, to be said.
No, because we don't have a lot of people of color here.
That's right, that's right, that's right.
Painfully true.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine this is really going to confound people who've done long prison sentences for marijuana offenses under the Rockefeller drug laws, which is just so heavy-handed and ridiculous to put somebody in jail for 10 years for marijuana possession, and those things have happened, especially to people of color. So, anything else? Well, it seems like we have a little time to think, and then we'll just, what's our next step here, Steve?
Next step, if you want it done, would be let me know if you want a local law drafted up. I can give you a very vanilla one, and you can work off that if you like. And then you'd have to have a resolution introducing it. If it's just opting out, I don't believe that would be subject to SECRA. If you're going to marry your zoning to it, then it would be subject to SECRA, and it would, of course, require referral to county planning as well. But if you start with just the vanilla opt-out, take a look at it. If you decide you want to introduce it, do a resolution introducing it. You'll hold a public hearing, and then if you're so inclined, you'll enact it. And it has to be, I believe, it has to be filed with the state, in particular, the cannabis board has to be alerted that you're not allowing it. They're going to, I guess, keep a catalog of what municipalities are and what municipalities aren't opted out.
All right. So we have a little time to think about it, but it seems like it's going to take time. So, all right, if there's nothing else, we're going to end this workshop. But thanks for coming out. I'm a little disappointed there wasn't more public input on this, so, but not surprised, because that's the way it is. People wait until things get done, and then they start complaining.
Is the village having something like this week? Tomorrow night, right?
I'm going to go down there and complain.
We've already passed two local laws, not passed, but we've prepared two local laws and voted to go to public hearing to opt out of sales and opt out of consumption. And then tomorrow night is public hearing on that.
Well, don't we feel bad? Thanks a lot. We'll get to it.
Maybe come listen, because we don't have a real sense of how it's going to go. There doesn't really seem to be a lot of chatter about it happening around, so I find that surprising.
Right.
It'll be at the firehouse, so come and listen.
So that's always a plus. Everybody loves going to the firehouse, especially John. Bobby loves it almost.
We anticipate a lot of people.
I got a planning board meeting tomorrow
I
night.
thought there'd be more people here tonight.
Yeah, I did too. Everybody loves a meeting.
And we did
So,
invite the Village of Nelsonville as
Yeah,
well.
we did invite Village of
They were
Nelsonville.
not here. Kathleen represents the Village of Cold Spring.
No, she's not
Well,
around. She's not representing the village.
thanks for coming.
thanks for coming in.
It was almost. Maybe in January.
Yeah, we should just, free brownies.
Yes. We adjourn.